Welcome to Booktopia TV. I'm John Purcell and I'm here with Swan, former Treasurer of Australia and now author of his book, The Good Fight. Welcome, Swan.
Great to be here.
If, your book covers the six years that you were Treasurer, from the highs of the Rudd slide and the first years of Labor government up to so long, to the lows of that final few months with both coming back in. Is a postmortem necessary, considering that a lot of people think of it as an obvious suicide?
Well, the book does cover the highs and the lows, but what we shouldn't miss in the middle of the highs and the lows was the spectacular performance of Australia, the Australian economy during the global financial crisis and the years that followed. We've got an economy now that's 16% bigger than it was at the end of 2007, and the reason that it's like that is because when the global financial crisis hit and global demand fell off a cliff, we put in place the most effective response of any government in the Western world. And the consequence is we did not go through a recession, so that when the mining boom arrived a couple of years later, we were in good shape to take advantage of it. And Australia has done better, not just in terms of economic growth, but better socially, in terms of opportunity for all of our citizens than just about any other developed economy. And that's the story I wanted to tell. But I've told that story, warts and all. If you're going to claim credit for these successes, then you have to own up to the failings and the problems, and the book does that as well.
Talking about the way in which the media represents you, I mean, I generally it's painful, but I generally make an effort to watch Channel 9 when I can, and then SBS and then ABC, to see the same stories represented through three different markets in a sense. And the variety in those news sources is ever more frightening, because the one that's getting the most views is the one that's giving the least news. When you look at those channels, when you look at Fox and when you look at the Telegraph and different newspapers, and their readerships are growing, we're choosing that. How do you stop Australians from choosing those sort of?
I'm not sure if their numbers are growing. The Foxification, if you like, of say the Daily Telegraph and the Australian, I think is resented by a large percentage of the population. And it still does have an impact and an influence, because I don't believe that they present their material in a balanced way as they claim that they should be doing. So these are problems for Australia, but look, there are other ways around this, and we got to the point where we tried to find many other ways of getting our message out, not just social media, but being out on the ground as much as we possibly could was also a very important part of it. Ultimately, the people will make their judgment, but we've got to bear in mind that there are forces at work in the Australian political system that are incredibly hostile to the Australian Labor movement and the Australian Labor Party. And people ought to be aware that the material they present from time to time is biased and prejudicial and not an accurate reflection of what has actually been happening. Take this characterisation that somehow there is an economic emergency. I mean, that should just be laughed out of any respectable news organisation that it appears regularly in a number of our major newspapers as if it's fact, but it's clearly not fact.
Yeah. After all that, and after 6 years in government, do you recommend a political life?
There could be no greater purpose in life than to serve your community and to seek to implement the values and the policies that flow from them in your community. As I said before, I believe we live in a community, not in a corporation. I believe we live in probably the best country in the world. So much of what we've done here has been unique, and the reason I keep fighting and why the good fight goes on is a lot of that's on the line and being challenged. We're one of the most prosperous, but also one of the fairest developed economies in the world. They want to keep us that way. But that's not the way that Conservative politics is going. They want to go down the American road of a shrinking middle class, an increasing distribution of wealth which is skewed to the top. That's not the sort of society and economy I want for this country.
Is it ever too late to get up off the couch, get up and get involved in politics?
No, not at all. It's never too late in just about any endeavour. Because if you're passionate about what you do, I think the most important thing about politics is to be passionate about it. But if you're just going to be on a power trip which which isn't really driven by your values, then you most likely fail. And of course, there'll be some people who get through who are valued less.
Yeah.
And of course, that is eventually shown to be the case.
And what's next for Wayne Swan?
I'm going to get out there and continue the good fight. And having been a treasurer for 6 years, I think there's a lot I can say in the public debate when these big questions are on the line that might have some impact over time. But I'm enjoying being home again. I'm enjoying being a local member of Parliament, and I'm enjoying the freedom of not having a ministerial or shadow ministerial role, so I can make the commentary that I want to make, which I believe serves the purposes we've spoken about.
Thank you very much for speaking with us today, Wayne Swan.
Good to be with you.
Wayne Swan's book, The Good Fight, is available from booktopia.com.au right now.